2 months remain before the British general election. I'm here with Janan Ganesh, our chief political commentator. Janan, you're saying that whatever the outcome, Britain is heading towards federalism. Why?
It all comes down to the Scottish National Party. They are on course, if you believe the polls, to win almost all of the 59 seats in Scotland, completely decimating Labour in the process. That means that if neither Labour nor the Tories win an overall majority in the House of Commons, the SNP will be in a position to ultimately decide which bits of legislation get passed.
And that's never happened before.
No, and they have incredibly strong reasons to be provocative in the House of Commons, to push legislation in a leftward direction and to annoy English voters. And the long-term impact of that, I think, across a parliament would be to create English frustration with the union, of which there is already some. And the price the SNP will ask in return for supporting any legislation is massive further devolution of power to Scotland and so-called Home Rule. But
I thought the Scottish question was resolved, or at least put off for a generation, after a fairly decisive vote north of the border, 55-45, in favour of keeping the union.
You would have thought so, but ultimately referendums don't really settle anything. In 1975, this country voted to stay in the European Economic Community. By 83, Labour were campaigning to leave. And similarly, this time, there was a decisive vote for the union. But I think it was a pragmatic vote. Emotionally, sentimentally, I think the first preference of a majority of Scots was independence. But the practical questions stopped them. Which currency would they use? Who would stand behind RBS if it went under again? So sentimentally, I think the unionist side actually lost the campaign. And so there's a huge surge of what you might call a sympathy vote for the SNP amongst ordinary Scots, and that's why they've quadrupled their membership to 100,000 over the past 6 months.
And of course, the other side of the coin, the pound coin, is the English question, and there's a problem there, isn't there?
Well, the more power you devolve to Scotland, the more acute the so-called West Lothian question becomes. This is the fact that in the House of Commons, Scottish MPs can vote on English laws, but they don't vote on laws affecting their own constituents. So England gets shortchanged when it comes to constitutional arrangements. And that's been tolerated so far. I think it would not be tolerated if there was a government which was governing the whole of UK without a majority in England, passing laws that are some way to the left of the English centre ground. And that is an eminently realistic scenario if you look at the electoral maths in the Commons over the coming years.
Right. So what do you think, roughly and briefly, the constitutional solution is?
I think we'll end up with federalism or quasi-federalism, which will mean an English House of Commons and a second chamber, the House of Lords, which becomes an elected chamber dealing with matters that are UK-wide. And that would be foreign policy, clearly, defence, issues to do with the monarchy, and some tax and spend issues as well. And you'd have an English First Minister and a UK Prime Minister. It's not an ideal solution, but I think it's marginally better than the unsustainable non-federal union we have now.
And in that arrangement, would a Scotland have to keep the Trident missile system?
The SNP don't want to. I imagine the long-term compromise is that the nation keeps, the UK keeps Trident, but it's located elsewhere. The Scots negotiate a way of excluding it from their own nation.
So bottom line is, few weeks to go for the election, but political risk coming back to the United Kingdom.
Massive risk.
Janan Ganesh, thank you very much.